Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's morning, coffee is here. I have the Kermit thing going on. Hey, the green screen makes Kermit invisible. That's pretty impressive there. But welcome to the show. Lots to cover to this morning. Kenrick is going to be joining us shortly. So we'll talk with him as well with some of the headlines. And then obviously we're going to kind of like take a look ahead to the weekend too and see if we can foresee some things. We're pretty brutal with our projections, but you know what? We'll give it a shot either way. Alan is with us again this morning. Good morning, Alan. What's happening? I'm sure it's a lot warmer out there in Houston than it is here. It's pretty brutal and it's supposed to be rough today. But then, hey, we're getting a heat wave up to the 40s next week. So things should be good. I'm assuming Kenrick is enjoying nice weather over there in Jamaica as well. Everybody but freaking me. Okay, so let's get to the headlines real quick, and then I know like Henrik is getting set up, so once he's ready to go, he'll be hopping on as well. So let's start with this one here in the middle. The whole Mason Greenwood charges dropped kind of thing. Alan says 38 over there. Just how do you do it? You must be freezing. So let's talk about this Mason Greenwood thing, right? So the charges have been dropped. Due to, I think the exact wording was like some of the witnesses withdrawing their testimony. I mean, in this case, mind you, we had like tape and stuff too. I'm assuming those witnesses are the complainant, and that, hate to assume, but usually means, based on having listened to the tape and everything, usually means there's some kind of a payoff or some kind of an understanding. They're like, hey, don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And then the complaint gets removed. And sadly, I think Alan was the one throwing some stats at us yesterday on Discord in terms of like how these are handled in the UK overall and how many of them are actually prosecuted and how actually, like these assault cases in return don't even get reported because obviously the success rate or what happens is so low. People tend to kind of not report it and stuff like that. So the numbers are actually probably a lot worse than they look. So I know, most of us obviously we're looking at this as a Manchester United player and stuff like that. But let's even take that out of the equation because this is even more douchey than being a United player in the first place, what this guy has done. And you can say, oh, he was never proven guilty and stuff. I don't know, like you listen to that tape and stuff, he's fucking guilty. I don't know, like if I realize, maybe it can't be prosecuted, but I don't know if there's a lot of discussion. I don't know if there are any like United fans, even unless they're totally blind, can come up and say, oh, he's innocent because he was never like guilty in that court of law and stuff like that, having seen all the evidence that was like floating around on Twitter and stuff like that. So let's take the Manchester United thing out of the equation. And that's what I want to ask you guys, like the live listeners right now, is what you guys think. And then hopefully, like once Kenrick joins us, he's having some technical difficulties in the background. So once he joins us, I want to find out from him too, is how we would approach it or look at it if it was a Liverpool player, or would that even make a difference? I mean, I think it's a lot easier for us to say, right? Because it's not happening, that it is, oh, we would totally we would not care and stuff like that. And in most cases, I don't think we would. I don't think most of us would. But just like there are some United fans right now who would say, well, he's innocent. He was never prosecuted, blah, blah, blah. There'll be a small portion of Liverpool fans that are blind to truth. Let's not kid ourselves. Those people are always out there in any fan base. You can argue the percentage, but they're always around. So I can see that. I guess now that this happened, let's say, and they're ready, like the charges have been dropped. So essentially, he could come back and play. Would you guys want a player like that coming back and saying almost like, oh, you've been vindicated or whatever? Because it would be one thing to go to court, I think, and be proven innocent. A lot more facts come out, whatever the case might be. But in this case, the witnesses dropped their testimonies, which means, people kind of like backed out of the ordeal. So instead of not being proven innocent, and I realize it's innocent until proven guilty, but in this case, like I say, like we had a lot of like evidence out there telling us it did happen. Dude is guilty. He just didn't manage to not go to court or whatever. So would you guys want a player like that back? If he was playing for Liverpool, like I say, let's try to take the Manchester United out of the equation. Even would it be different for you if it was, I don't know, Fulham or Bournemouth or somebody like that, not a rival, if you will? Would it make a difference for you? And if it was Liverpool, would you want them coming back to Liverpool? Because, and here's another thing, like, would even United want them coming back, as they feel like they're improving things? I think their business has gotten a bit smarter as well. It's still United, but still, I think they've been able to, like replace Ericsson, for example, and stuff like that. Like they're making some moves that seem to be smarter, at least. And you can tell kind of like they're trying to put something together. Would they want Greenwood in there now? While as a player, a player like Mason Greenwood, they might, if it was like Mason Bluewood or something like that. No pun intended. But the disruption, the attention is going to get, because that's all that's going to be asked. Why would anybody want this in their club and in their environment? Especially a guy who's been, I saw that, like Ten Hag kind of like was like, oh, who knows, and stuff like that, and kind of sidestepped it, because I think he's waiting for the club to kind of make a call on it before anything else. And I'm sure there's a lot of legal stuff to go with this too, in terms of like giving back his employment and all that kind of stuff. Like if they terminate the contract, they probably have to pay him and stuff, because ultimately they can't say, well, you were guilty or stuff like that, because he was not. He never went to court. So I'm sure there's like kind of like a lot of sticky stuff there. But would you even want him to be involved? Why would they want to be involved? And how would the fans react? I guess is like my biggest thing. Wherever he goes in terms of away fans, he's going to get a lot of abuse. But how would, I wonder, United fans approach it? Are they going to like call him to the stands and applaud a guy that, did not get prosecuted because the witness dropped the complaints and stuff like that? I mean, that kind of like sounds a little seedy and shady, even for United fans. But let's bring on Kenrick over here. Kenrick, what's happening, man?
Oh, yes. Hey, Tim. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are things in Jamaica? I'm assuming they're a lot warmer than here.
Oh, boy. There's a lot happening in Jamaica, but the worst thing that's happening in Jamaica right now is that I have to be quiet when those fans from Manchester United and Arsenal are talking. I have to really be quiet, and that irks me the most.
So, well, Manchester United, I don't know if you were able to like listen in initially, but I was talking about the whole Mason Greenwood thing. What do you think of it, first of all, like that the charges got dropped because of like the complaint is gone and stuff? Would you want a player like that back on your team after all this, if it was playing for Liverpool or something?
That's kind of a tough one, knowing that if you try to take it from the professional standpoint, they say, okay, it's a professional, needs to be given a chance, but everything that comes with it, you have to be prepared to deal with it with your organization. And I am not so sure. I'd have to really think about it and weigh the pros and cons to see how it pans out. But I believe as a professional, everyone should be given an opportunity to exercise their craft, unless they do something really so egregious. And again, you'd have to crunch the numbers to see where you fall on that. That's just for me.
So you're looking at it like a lot more number wise. Okay, I got you. I just feel like I don't know, it just would not sit right. And I don't know how many fans would welcome him after all this. If United were really bad, do you think how United are playing makes a difference? Like if they were playing worse, if they were in shambles, they would be more likely to bring him back, as opposed to now where the trajectory is high?
That's true. It depends on the form of the team as well. Because if the team is doing well, you may not want that drama to come in, and then you'd have to deal with that blowback in case it happens. But if the team is doing poorly, you could make a case for bringing him back. But for right now, I think the best thing for them to do is to just they really have to do their AKA market research to see how it will be perceived by their fans, and go for and do what's best for the club. That's the only thing I could say.
Yeah, I think it's sad that it would have to come to how the team is doing and stuff that we even have to make a decision based on that. I think based on how he is, he should just not be playing at all. But okay, let's look at this. Juventus are furious with Paul Pogba, who's yet to play a minute since his return, despite club investing 31 million to bring him back. I mean, to be fair, Juventus is a hot mess by itself. So should Juventus be furious with Pogba or Pogba furious with Juventus?
I think Juventus should be the ones that are feeling furious right now. I think Juventus as a club, based on their history, um, they have they have a brand because everybody knows that the old lady is a brand, and I think this is hurting them more than anyone else. So I think they should
Yeah.
be the ones that are furious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that kid dude will is not a kid anymore, where that dude will end up because I don't know, like a promising career kind of like got derailed when he came back to United over here. But Kendrick, I know like you're having difficulties with sound, so uh give me your prediction for the weekend. Let me get that from you before we lose you.
All right, so tomorrow we have Wolves, right? And yes, I apologize for my technical issues right now, but tomorrow we have Wolves, and we need a win more than anything else. We need a win. We can't even consider a draw. So even though I would love to be conservative in my estimate, I cannot afford it right now. Right now, I need to be able to go to the pub where all those Arsenal and Manchester United fans are going rah rah rah, and I be as much as they can. So I need a win. I need Liverpool to come through for me tomorrow, and I want a handsome win. I'm saying that we beat Wolves, let's say 2-0.
2-0. Okay. Well, Kendrick, thanks a lot, man. I know you did your best with the technology available. We'll see you next week.
All right, man. Thank you for having me.
Take
Have a good
care.
one.
Alan says Pogba to Houston Dynamo. I mean, yeah, that's probably next, right? Major League Soccer. Well, just kind of like walk around, do a couple of things here and there, and look good over here, probably. But and then get hurt and collect his check and stuff like that. I think it's kind of like a weird ordeal because the guy we saw at Juventus in the World Cup and stuff like that was a player that had figured it out and stuff like that, and obviously Juventus they either forked out the money, brought him back in, but obviously it ended up being a failed experiment. And I don't know like if things would be different now for him at United, or he was part of the problem anyway. Things are better because problem people are like them are gone. I mean, that's kind of like hard to figure out and speculate, but it's just, I mean, he's brought a lot of this on himself as well with how he's approached things, but at the same time, he was dealt a shitty hand. At 2-2, Ellen, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, let's not do that because it's going to be a weird lineup, right? Let's kind of like take a look at the weekend real quick, but you got to figure, obviously, with no Konate, we're probably seeing Matip and Gomez in the middle. And yes, that sounds like shaky and scary by itself, I think. And I don't know if that kind of determines what we do in midfield. Because the back line is going to need a bit more protection, or how we play is away as well. So I think obviously you have Trent and Robo, I think, on both sides. So I think the back of the lineup kind of like shapes up that way based on who's available. I don't think you make any other changes. I don't think you put Milner and right back or anything like that. I think the trick is going to be the midfield in terms of who we put there. I mean, do you keep Elliott in the starting lineup? Because I feel like, if you keep Elliott in the starting lineup, maybe put Nunez instead of Gakpo and stuff. But I mean, the whole point of Gakpo was to be able to, press more up top and stuff like that. So if you move Gakpo to the left or keep him central and put Nunez to the left, which we tend to do for some odd reason, what do we do in midfield? Who's the three that we use in midfield? Do we work Elliott in there somehow just purely on his form, regardless of if it works or not? I think that's going to be an important decision that Klopp has to make, or keep Elliott out there and again, like do what we did in the fake out, which I'm not a huge fan of, and keep basically Nunez to come off the bench. We're talking about on the Monday podcast with Gally, like use him to be that attacking force coming off the bench, because otherwise, you look on the sideline, it's like, is it going to be Phillips or Milner coming in to help us attack kind of a deal? So does he do that, or does he play I mean, Thiago has played so many freaking games. So I almost feel like if we're gonna rest anybody, it should be him. So do you? But Elliott as a replacement for Thiago does not sound right either. So if you have, let's say, Fabinho, so I mean, your options are like Fabinho, Henderson, who both are extremely out of form. It feels like, and not the original default version that we would, we're used to seeing. So do we get them, or you have Keita, Basetic, and Elliott, who have played better and kind of like has made a difference in that midfield trajectory in terms of like, being in shambles to being at least more average and a bit more contained. And I know we don't play the line as high and stuff like that as well, but it feels like, especially if the front three can help them out, I think I'm okay with that starting 11 of Basetic and, Elliott and Keita. It's risky, but it is the Wolves. And at this point, you need wins. I mean, I don't know if we go out to games saying, oh, we got to stop them first and then see if we get a goal kind of thing. It's almost like got to approach every game like we need the 3 points, because we do need the freaking 3 points. Looking at the standings over here, which we'll do kind of like next. We'll look at the fixtures for the weekend as well. But I think that's like the biggest deal here. I don't know if playing too conservative is the way to go right about now. When I say conservative, I mean like, with defense in mind first, especially against the Wolves team that usually struggles to score. I think if you were playing against a more potent team like Brighton or something like that, yeah, you played a bit more safer first. But I think against a team like Wolves, you do go out there, and we do have experience playing against them, unfortunately, with the cup games and stuff like that. So we do know them well. We know what we can do against them. So let's see what we can kind of like pull off. But I think I'm okay with that 11 there. The one that I just like put out with Elliott and Keita, and then have Nunez, Mo, and Gakpo up top. Because really, I mean, I talked about this on Monday. I talked about this on a couple of podcasts now, because I think it is an ongoing problem that if our front three is more threatening and puts a scare into the opposing team, I think we have a lot better chance of being able to get something out of a game and help our midfield and help our back line. When we don't pose as much of a threat up top, when you don't have like Nunez over there with the speed over the top, it's very, I mean, Mo has not been himself. And I think that's partially why, because the rest and the interplay is not where it's at. You can kind of tell like Mo and Nunez have not clicked together yet, and so how they play. And Nunez always sliced to the left anyway. And part of that ordeal was, I think, that was going to be in some kind, a benefit, because him sliding to the left, obviously, if Diaz was there, would be automatic overload to the left side, right? And you would have more isolated, but at the same time, probably isolated against the left back, like probably more like get one-on-one situations. But I feel like even when we have gotten Mo on these one-on-ones, he has not been as effective in the past. It's kind of like, he kind of like dances around a little bit, and then nothing happens and we lose the ball. And sadly, most of the time, actually, it starts to counter because the left is already overloaded too. So it'll be interesting to see like how we do, but really everything to me kind of like goes on the front three over there. The week actually starts today. So if you're a fantasy guy, hopefully you watched the show last night with Gally and Matush. I still have Cancelo in my lineup, so that should say everything you need to know about my fantasy team. But let's take a look at this real quick, give some early predictions. And then tomorrow we'll be live before the game for the pre-match. So we'll be able to get a chance to talk about the lineup and stuff like that a lot more then. And obviously we're going to be on the post-match right after the game over here as well, with the game being at like a normal human time for us over here and throughout the US. Probably still early for California and stuff, but at least not freaking 4:30 in the middle of the night early. So let's look at the games right here. The week starts today. Chelsea, Fulham. It's going to be interesting. Chelsea is almost like watching preseason with a bunch of new dudes. I don't know how many of them will play. I think one thing that brings is excitement, right? Especially for a home game. I think that's a good ordeal because you're going to really get the fans into it, excited to see these new players, the investment and stuff like that. The flip side of that is, though, it's a bunch of like disconnected and not played together dudes playing together. So how that's going to work, while you can have players that are like really good on paper or maybe like even overall, it's just how people work. It's a team game at the end. So it's not like, basketball where it's 5-on-5 and then, the dude is really good. He just joined here. Like, we'll just isolate every time and he can beat people off the dribble or something like that. I mean, it's a team game, especially defensively. And Fulham can be dangerous. They do get goals. So that's going to be actually a fun game to watch later on today. It says 2 p.m. That's 2 p.m. Central, because the computer knows I'm here in Chicago freezing my ass off. Tomorrow morning, I would have liked to watch this game, but I'm not getting up at 6:30 for this one. Everton, Arsenal. I almost feel like this is for Sean Dyche. It's more of a throwaway game. I don't think anybody's expecting anything, even Everton fans. They will take any kind of improvements. And I think when you're looking to find an improvement, you can probably find something after you watch the game, or like, but they ran more or something like that. But I think Arsenal make easy work of them, because Arsenal can really pick apart a defense like Everton's. And I mean, Sean is not going to create miracles in 3 days. He might basically bring a new mindset and will be kind of like a different approach. I mean, maybe it's like, like when you reboot your computer, everything runs a bit faster. Minds are clearer. There's no like clouds over the team. I mean, there's a cloud over the team in Everton. I'm just saying, in terms of not players seeing it as a brand new start sometimes helps. That's why when you get a new manager, usually you get this like 3-4 week boost. But I don't think it's fair to expect a boost against Arsenal. And it would be a huge feat if they were able to even get a point out of this game. I think that's a great result for Everton if they're able to pull that off. But I personally don't see it happening. But I'm not the best when it comes to projections recently. So let's see how that goes. Alan says Chelsea will be using both the home and away changing rooms. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I saw like a depth chart the other day. I mean, some of those guys are like loaned out and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, holy cow. That's why I think both Pep and Klopp were kind of like talking about it in their pre-match press conferences, and they both kind of said, how does this even happen? And when Pep says, how does this even happen? There's something really jacked up, because Pep knows how that shit happens. Or he could be like, they don't even have fake sponsors. How do they do it? It's kind of a questioning. But I don't know. It's really risky business that they've done, and I'm sure FIFA will be like, "What is this? Baseball contracts? What's happening?" So try to figure it out. But those are some risky ordeals. They are signing some very good young talent, so got to give him that. They're getting like these top young guys. They're not like bringing in like these guys who are like the last 2 seasons and signing them for 8 years or something like that. So if essentially these players pan out, yeah, you locked the dude in for this long or whatever. But a couple of like things to that. One, in 5 years, if these guys are really that good and they're like world stars now, they're not going to be too thrilled with what they're making then, because by then the other world star is going to be making probably twice as much in terms of wages. So there's going to be a lot of issues there, I think. Two, and this is kind of like more likely scenario in at least some of the players, because when you do this with a bunch of people, you do it with one player and you roll the dice and you say, okay, like Mbappe or something like that. You're like, okay, you know what? Split it to 7-8 years. This guy's going to be good forever. Okay, that's fine. But then what if you guys, they're doing it with the multiple number of players, right? And not every single one of them are going to be Premier League stars. The ratio is out there. So that's when you run into trouble. When the guy does not pan out and now he's on your books for another 5 years. And this is a tough league. So not every player is successful, even if they were successful in their own league, or, we've seen him in the Champions League and all that kind of stuff. Not every big signing ends up being a great signing. I mean, it's clear, right? Look at United, for example. And look at Chelsea themselves. I mean, Chelsea have done them themselves. I mean, they have players on their squad now that they signed for big money. The difference is they're going to be off their books in a year and stuff like that. Whereas these guys will not be. I don't know if they're thinking, I will just like load them out all over the place, but I don't know who's going to pay those wages at the time for a player that's not performing. So in 4 years, if one of these guys gets injured, doesn't come back right, the other one is not performing well, could not adjust to the Premier League, whatever, they could be in really deep trouble. I almost feel like that's when the owners will bail on them and put Chelsea in a tough spot, because I really don't see every single player they're getting. You would have to be extremely lucky for all of them to be panning out. I still feel like the whole Enzo thing is a huge, huge risk and has James Rodriguez written all over it, to be honest with you. Obviously, our boys are playing at like 9 o'clock. So that's a perfect timing for us and not really missing a whole lot in terms of like the other games. Newcastle West Ham should be an interesting game to see how Newcastle continue, because really, if we're going to go up to the top four, we need United or Newcastle or somebody to go into a slump of some sort. So we kind of put together 3-4 wins on the bounce, and they kind of put a couple of 3-4 stumbles on the bounce to close that gap. We're at like, if we win our like game in hand, looks like we're about like 7 points or something like that behind, I think. And then Sunday afternoon, Tottenham City. That is a huge game for both sides, I think, because I mean, if we're talking about, you ask fans, most fans right now feel maybe more realistically than a guy like me, but that top four is pretty much gone. I feel like it's a little too early to be able to say that. You just don't know. Like I say, if a team turns around and wins like 4 or 5 games on the bounce, you can like really climb up there really fast, especially if you beat some of your rivals in that area. So if we consider Liverpool to be like kind of like in danger of being totally out of the top four, well, Tottenham could be there with another loss. So it's kind of like a good or like a big game for them. And the same thing goes for City, who kind of is finding ways to win and keep up. But like I say, with Everton, Arsenal early, like tomorrow morning, where I predicted that Arsenal would win, it puts a lot more pressure on City to keep winning, to just keep the gap alive. It's not even like they're closing it or if keeping pace. I mean, there's already a gap that they have to make up. They still play them, so they have that to go with. Maybe City is just saying, hey, we just win our games. When the time comes, we'll beat them, and this is going to take care of itself. All we got to do is, win the game in front of us and stuff. But anytime you have like a title race of some sort and you play after the other team, whether you're chasing or whether you're in the lead, I always feel like it puts a bit more pressure on the team that's playing afterwards, just looking at the table, because when they go into the game, they could be 8 points behind with a game in hand and stuff like that. And that's a huge difference as opposed to going out to a game 5 points behind with a game in hand. I know it's all like psychological, but this game is a lot of psychology, and the players do get affected a lot by what's happening. I mean, look at our boys right now. When you're winning, that kind of breeds more winning. When you're struggling, that kind of unfortunately breeds more struggling. But let's hope a new winning streak starts tomorrow for Liverpool. And then as these guys get back, I think Jota and Van Dijk are going to be back at practice next week. So as we get these guys back, I mean, the guy that I'm waiting on, the guys I should say, is Bobby and Diaz to be out there. I really think that would be a turning point. So if we're still somehow hanging around in the Champions League by then, and we're within distance for the top four, I would be very hopeful that we would climb up there. But all this could be coming crashing down tomorrow too, so you never know. But we'll be here before the game to talk about once the lineups come out. So about like 8:20 Central, 9:20 Eastern, we should be going on air. We'll talk about the starting lineup and all that kind of stuff once it's out, what we expect to see. And then right after the game, we'll be here for the post-match as well. You guys have like an excellent Friday. If you get to watch the game, enjoy the Chelsea Fulham game, and let's see how many of these new faces we even see. With their injuries, I would expect them to see quite a few of them. So that should be an interesting game to watch by itself that way. And then you guys have an excellent Friday. Like I said, I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning for the pre-match